hello.
Well, hello there.
May I just say what a pleasure it is to see you, to hear you. In fact, it's a privilege that I have this time with you.
Didn't we talk like this a couple of weeks ago?
I mean, a couple of weeks, that cadence doesn't really work for me. I feel like I've raised this issue to you before. Once a week at the maximum would be where I'm comfortable.
I see. All right, I'll start working on that. What is your
And
audio? Your audio
if I have to
sounds
come up,
really far away.
oh, well, I'm using these headphones, but I guess since I'm the only one here, I don't need the headphones.
Okay.
Let's try it without.
Okay.
All right, this is no headphone.
Oh, this is so much better.
But now I don't hear you as well. That hurts.
You can listen to the recording later.
Okay. That'll be like a better edited version.
I mean, that is one of the struggles with this, like the first two episodes, that there's no way I can influence the audio setup of the person I'm recording.
Yeah.
And I mean, that's just, it sounds like it's from a 10 in all cases. So you're not going to like come in with the worst quality audio. It's all, everybody has really bad audio.
As long as I'm better than John, that's the main thing that I'm concerned about.
I think that'll be up to you. Let's see how your performance is.
Is the video also being, because I haven't made myself up for anything.
No. The videos, because I'm editing the audio already. There's so many audio issues. So if I edited the video, it would make no sense because it would be jump cuts all over the place.
Yes, that makes sense.
It's so nice to see you, though. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. I'm a little tired. I've been biking all day.
All day?
From my place on the Upper West Side down to Brooklyn to see some apartments. And not just like Brooklyn, like near Brooklyn, like deep Brooklyn, like suburban Brooklyn. But it was nice. There are some nice places down there.
You're surprised after living in New York your whole life.
I mean, look, I don't want to insult any of our potential listeners.
You're the only one, by the way, who even cares about the audience. Like both of the first two people did not.
Yeah, but imagine this gets really big, and those thousands of followers come back, and some of them live in Ditmas, and they're like, I can't believe that he would impugn my homeland or whatever.
I do believe that if it gets big, they will listen to the first 2 or 3 episodes, right? Just to see where it comes from. So
they will listen to the origin story.
Yeah. So you can be the rustic original, sounded like it's recorded from a closet, first episodes.
Yeah. No, I'm good. A little tired, but good. How are you? Okay. Your beard is looking magnificent as usual.
Oh, thank you. I actually just trimmed it down today. It was like twice this size. It was getting out of control. I'm enjoying it quite a lot, to be honest. I've never had a beard before. It's not as much work as I thought. It's also not as least of work as I thought. Like I was like, okay, no shaving, nothing else. But no, you have to do a lot more.
You need to trim, yeah.
Yeah. You've got some level of stubble going always.
Yeah, I had kind of more close to what you had, although yours looks really full. I really like that.
Yeah.
With mine, it was a little bit like curly or messy, but I shaved completely like 2.5 weeks ago and just grew back a little bit.
See, now that is a good beard for 2.5 weeks. Like generally when I'm talking to people, they get what you have in like months. And then I'm like, I don't want to have this conversation.
That's true. I have good acceleration, but I think my top velocity is not as good as some other people.
I see. And it's also the curly. Like for me, once it's like big enough, it's so curly that I can't do the nice, big, long, like strands of hair that become like, I don't know, like ends of mustaches or like beards or whatever. So I'm like, yeah, I'm going to keep it trimmed to this size. So what did you pick? What did you pick for the topic?
Well, I had to think about this because I consider myself kind of a generalist. I know a little bit about a bunch of different areas. And the one area that I know a bunch about, puzzles, I feel like we already talk about that. And I talk about that with other people. And I couldn't stand another hour of talking about that topic. And so I was trying to think like what what topic really is another thread that runs through my life? You know, what's another topic that helps me to understand the world and gives me comfort in times of struggle? And so I had to decide on Seinfeld as a topic.
That's great. That's obviously a topic near and dear to my heart as well. But definitely, we don't talk about Seinfeld as much as we talk about puzzles. How do you engage with Seinfeld? Do you actually, on a day-to-day basis? So there's a couple of ways we can go, right? There's like forward-looking questions. How do you deal with this topic in day-to-day? Or, as you said, origin story. How did you get into Seinfeld? Or it's always been a part of your life?
Yeah, coming out of the womb, I just heard that bass line. And it just like hooked me from the very moment. I'll answer your first question. Like, I don't watch Seinfeld on a day-to-day basis. Maybe I'll watch it like a full episode. I don't know, not too often, once a month or so. I'll get into a phase where I'm just like, I'm watching some episodes, but I don't watch full episodes. But every day, I would say there is a moment where I notice something or I have some conversation and it reminds me of a Seinfeld episode. Like, without fail. It could be even more than one time a day. And it's almost shocking because no other show or cultural touchstone has this impact on me.
That is quite fascinating. I guess, do you consider yourself an expert in Seinfeld? Like, do you have encyclopedic knowledge of episodes or like stuff like that?
I think I have a particular kind of expertise. Like, if you said the name of an episode, I don't know if I could say exactly what was in that episode, but I have like a knowledge of the dialogue in each episode. So if you were to start a part of a dialogue, I could almost certainly finish it or like see through the end of the scene, you know? But yeah, I guess like I've watched it a bunch. Maybe I've watched each episode, I don't know, 5 times or so, which, I mean, I'm sure people have watched it more, but
I do want to say there is no expectation of you are like the comic book guy of Seinfeld. Like,
yeah, I don't have the particular, oh yeah, you haven't prepared. That's good. Because I probably can easily be stumped on Seinfeld. It just has a personal relevance to my life, I would say.
This is definitely not a trivia show. So maybe let's be very slice of life about it. What are the past few instances you remember, like today or yesterday? Like, we can start there, very organic.
Well, I'm doing a podcast right now, as it happens, about Seinfeld. So it's very top of mind, you could say. Let's say the other day I was in the park with my friend, who's also a big Seinfeld fan. We were talking about fruit. There was just a topic that came up that was like how eating some fruit made you more alert or energetic. And it reminded me of the mango episode where George is like suffering from impotence and eating a mango helps him like get over that thing. And it's just like random conversations. And a lot of times I'll be talking with my mom and she'll be like, that was such a Seinfeld thing to say. You know, there's a particular like kind of dialogue that is like Seinfeldian even, you could say.
How much of that is a Jewish person who happens to have a sense of humor living in New York? Yeah, as yourself, like as your identity?
That's a great question. I was trying to think about this before the show because like, all right, I think definitely there are elements that are Jewish or New York about it. And obviously Jerry Seinfeld and Larry David, who made the show, are Jewish and from New York. But like, on the other hand, Seinfeld was the #1 show in TV for like 5 years or something. And that's like nationwide. And Jews are a very small portion of the population. So obviously this resonates with everyone, but definitely there is something about it where it's like you've got these writers who are Jewish and some comedic tradition that's Jewish and very New York. So it's hard to really say.
I mean, the reason I asked that question is because like it is so caught up in your identity, right? Like if you were another person, obviously I would not ask that question, but I think it just makes sense to me. You have favorite episodes, right? Like there must be episodes that come to your mind more often than not.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I just want to say one thing about that other topic. It's like, I don't even think, yeah, like right now I'm living on the Upper West Side, which is where Jerry's apartment was supposed to be in the show. So I guess on one level you could say like, oh, well, you might think of it more because you're in that area. But the things that, and I think like it's dangerous to dissect comedy and I'm wary of making this like the most unfunny thing possible. But the things that I think are funny about Seinfeld are the things that just have to do with normal everyday interaction and the expectations of what you should say and shouldn't say or do in small situations. And I think that could take place between anyone and anywhere. So I don't really see it as like a New York show, even though in some sense, I guess it is a New York kind of show.
So I guess I'll play devil's advocate at times, right? So I'll throw a piece of
one of the many things that I love about you.
One of the pieces of criticism that I've seen bandied about on the internet against Seinfeld is 99% of the plots would be fixed with a cell phone. So do you think they could write a show as funny today? And if yes or no?
Absolutely. And I think that claim is false and libelous even. I cannot believe that someone would dare to say such a thing. I mean, yeah, I don't think any of the plots would be fixed with a cell phone.
For example, I'm thinking back to one of the most famous episodes was the parking garage one.
Okay.
And that literally you both save your car's location and you can call each other. So I guess going back to, there's this kind of comedy that is archetypal of the original comedy of errors that Shakespeare had. Where you kind of
bring a highbrow tone to this.
Yeah, exactly. So do you feel like Seinfeld is just always this miscommunication, missed expectations, stuff like that, or is it that it is that general?
No, I don't think. To me, that's not what Seinfeld's about. It's like you have a friend that you've had for a long time, and you don't know how to break up with that friend, or you've got an ex-girlfriend and she starts dating someone and you don't know whether it's okay to talk about it. Or you go to see your friend's baby and that baby's really ugly and you don't know if you should tell that your friend or how you can tell your friend that that her baby is really ugly. None of these things are related to technology. They're related to the way that humans interact.
That's a fair enough point. So I guess if you, maybe to put you on the spot a little bit, if you would like to see a Seinfeld episode about a more modern situation, like a 2020 situation, what would that look like?
Interesting. I mean, it's hard to answer because I do think that the show is timeless. It could be put in any, I can't really put in any time. I'm just trying to praise it a little bit more.
Is it international, I wonder?
Okay, coronavirus, COVID, that would be like perfect. Like just like how things happen remote and
yes.
Like for example, like you just start dating someone and it's like your roommates don't want you to bring them over to your apartment and you don't want to keep going back and forth. Like what's the etiquette? Or let's say, when to cover your mask or not. I'm not a writer, but I just feel like there's so many elements of no one knows what the right thing to do here is. And that's when I think a lot of Seinfeld plots really shine.
I see. I could totally see Larry David coming up with some small snidey phrase about people who do something with their mask. Like people who adjust their mask or something. Like he'd come up with just like a phrase. Or I can totally see, like when you said working from home, like George trying to like do something else as he's working from home.
Right. He realizes you can turn your camera off and he's trying to like sleep all day. But then his boss calls him out on something and things go from there.
Oh, that would be a lovely episode. Like he puts in more work to maintain the charade than like would actually just to do the work.
Yeah.
Is it your favorite show of all time?
I think so. Yeah. There are a lot of really amazing shows, but this is the show that I've definitely watched most. Yeah, I know. I think it's not just. I'll say this. not only is it my favorite show, but it is the best show of all time.
That's great. Let's say, give me 2 or 3 reasons for that, yeah?
Well, it is extraordinarily funny. I think that it was perfectly cast. All the 4 lead characters are exquisite in their roles, and they just went above and beyond. I think if anyone else were to be put in their role, it would sink. It wouldn't be as good. So the casting would be a second thing. And
are you still a pretty big Michael Richards fan?
I mean, I'm not a fan of him personally. I think he did a great job as Kramer.
I
Post
think
Seinfeld, his
I do wonder about that though, Alex. Like I genuinely, to me, that is such a big elephant in the room when it comes to him. Like people still watch and enjoy the show, and it's gonna keep playing on TV forever. But everybody has ignored him in a way that like he doesn't exist now, and he obviously is alive and well. I think South Park did a really good take on this whole situation.
What was their take?
I mean, it was hilarious, and the take was like he's wrong, but there's like other people out there doing way worse shit, and this is like a way of virtue signaling, basically.
I see.
Which, of course, I would say that.
I guess I don't even think of the Laugh Factory, like that incident, when I watch Seinfeld. Just in the same way that I don't think of like what's Julie Louis-Dreyfus up to now, or I don't think of what's Jason Alexander up to.
That's fair enough. You know, I think one of the reasons it also comes up in my mind is like I've seen it taint the legacy of Seinfeld in some sense, especially with like some of the performances that Jerry has had where he wanted to talk about this issue seriously. There's actually, maybe I should send you a clip. There's a late night clip where Jerry is trying to talk about some serious issue with Michael Richards, and people keep laughing in the audience because they think he's joking. And he has to at one point say like, no, this is really serious. Like, stop laughing. Like, I'm talking about something serious. And to me, that was such a surreal moment. A stand-up comedian has a show where he's a stand-up comedian and he's trying to say something about it. But people have such an expectation of make us laugh that he couldn't get his points across at all.
Jerry couldn't get his point across?
Yeah.
You know what's weird about Jerry Seinfeld? Like, I've seen some of his recent comedy stuff. Maybe there's one special that he did a while ago that I found funny, but I don't find his recent stuff that funny. And I don't find like Curb Your Enthusiasm that funny either. It's just something about the combination of them two that made a perfect combination.
Is Curb too cringe?
Curb is too cringe, yeah.
That's how I find it too. It's like some clips in isolation looks great, but episode-wise, like ingesting the whole thing, it's like too much George for me.
Exactly. Although George is probably my favorite character on Seinfeld. Should we explain what the show is to those younger or those listeners living under the rock?
What is this Seinfeld you talk about? Is this a German show? What is this?
We can take this part and edit it back so it's one of the first things that the listener hears.
So I guess the first question I'm going to ask to kick off the show is, what is Seinfeld? Like, you picked this topic. What is it?
Great question, and I'm glad you led off with that. Seinfeld is a show that takes place in New York City in the early to mid-90s, following 4 characters, friends, that just go about their day-to-day lives. You learn about their relationships, the social interpersonal interactions that they have. And it's just a very kind of slice of life, mundane show, but that is really funny.
I see. I'm getting more and more interested as you talk about it.
Yeah, I'd recommend watching an episode or two if you haven't. That's probably the best way to learn about what it is, or even a YouTube clip.
It sounds pretty obscure. If it was just running on TV or something, I guess I could catch it. But where would I get hold? Do I have to order like DVDs from Germany?
I think VHS is the best way. They never really made the transition to DVD.
Okay, you've seen Seinfeld end to end.
Yes.
I've never done that, I don't think.
It's interesting because like initially I used to watch it. I didn't really watch it too much when it was on because I was like, 8 or 9 even when it ended. Maybe I used to watch it sometimes with my parents, and then I would see it on reruns from time to time. And then I did decide to watch it straight through sometime, I think in college or something. And you do notice the different flavors of each season in a way that you probably wouldn't if you just saw it in reruns. So like the early seasons were very sparse. It wasn't played big at all. It was very, very, this could really happen. Any of these plots could happen in your life. And it wasn't as dramatic as some of the later seasons. And then as it went later and later, especially in like seasons 8 and 9, like anything could be a plot, like someone finding an abandoned game show set and moving it into their apartment and becoming a game show host. Like that could never happen in an earlier episode.
So one of the tidbits I think I heard once from Jerry in an interview was that a big game changer for them was when they got the street set where they could film outdoors. So I think for the first, I don't know, however many seasons, they just had only indoor locations. So for example, that led to very iconic episodes like the Soup Nazi, of course, but also the race episode, right, where the car backfires. Spoilers.
Love the race episode.
So do you think it's a matter of increasing budget?
I don't think it was increasing budget, although that may be a part of it. I haven't thought about it like that. I feel like one part of it was, especially for those later seasons when Larry David left,
He left?
Yeah, he wasn't there seasons 8 and 9.
What?
Yeah, so the show took on a very different flavor. It still had the vibe of George because the writers had sort of internalized that whole thing, but I think Jerry has a more lightness to him, and so it became a little more wacky later on. So that's one thing. And then also in the earlier episodes, like especially seasons 1 and 2, the characters weren't fully formed. Like they didn't know what the epitome of each character was. Like Kramer was just kind of like this slow oaf who was this neighbor who was modeled after Larry David's real neighbor. So they were modeling after this guy who Larry David had lived across from in his apartment. And this guy had some similarities to the Kramer that we know, but like he was really just kind of a lazy guy. And then I think Michael Richards had this idea of like being this guy who's smarter than everyone, or who came up with all these ideas. And then that kind of worked with the writers and they started making more plots along those lines. And then he became the Kramer that we know and love.
Oh, I see. So it's one of those cases of they like the performer so much that it added back to the character.
Yeah.
I think that was similar to in Breaking Bad as well. I think they were not gonna have Jesse beyond like some seasons, like the first or 2 seasons, and but they ended up having him throughout because it was such a fan favorite.
Yeah, Kramer is definitely a fan favorite. One other tidbit that I know, because I watched a lot of the YouTube like behind the scenes stuff, is that they had to actually, it was filmed in front of a live studio audience, and every time Kramer would open the door, he had the signature move where he would open the door and
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
the audience would go wild and they would cheer for like 30 seconds and they would cut off the cadence of the show. And so they had to tell people before the show, like, please don't cheer as much because it ruins the continuity of our comedy when you do so.
That's amazing. You can definitely tell that when he enters that there's a group of real people in the room reacting like, yes, things are about to pop off.
Yeah. Yeah.
But you said George is your favorite character.
Yeah. I just feel I identify with George a lot. If I were less successful, I could easily beat George.
I don't think so. I think you're pretty hit with the ladies.
I thought this was going to be a non-personal podcast.
Oh, we can edit it out. That's fine.
Well, actually, no, it's fine. George is certainly more of a hit with the ladies than I am. Like, he's certainly more of a hit with the ladies than he ought to be based on his characteristics.
I guess we have a yardstick. Do you think you would be able to charm Marissa Tomei?
I don't think so. I think George got farther with Marissa Tomei than I would. I feel a kinship with George because he's a little skeptical of the world, and maybe I used to feel more like George, and I still know what that feels like, but to feel like people are kind of looking at you funny or are out to get you, and to feel like you're well within your rights to come up with some scheme because people are trying to get you anyway, so might as well try to screw your boss or something. I don't feel more now, but I think I did once.
I don't know this personally, but I would hazard a guess that your parents are much nicer people than Frank and Estelle Costanza. So I think maybe that's where the difference lies.
Possibly, yeah. I love the parents on this show. Frank and Estelle Costanza, Jerry's parents. I guess just those two. But yeah, my parents are nicer, and they're not shrill. That's like a serious. That would be rough. But I would say that kind of argument is not uncommon in my family. Maybe not to that extreme.
Did your dad invent a holiday?
No. I was going to say, when you asked before what my favorite episodes are, one of those is the strike, where Frank Costanza has this whole holiday of Festivus where they have a poll and they say grievances about everyone that has disappointed them. It's just an amazing concept. And did you know that this was based on a real holiday of one of the writers in the show? One of the writers in the show, his dad actually invented Festivus, and they did it every year. And they just convinced him to write an episode around this, modifying a few details. That's how they came up with a lot of the great plots. It was like directly out of the lives of these messed up writers.
So basically what you're saying is, to become a comedy writer, you need to have a fucked up life.
Oh, yeah.
That's part of the recipe.
Yeah, comedy. Yeah, I think that's well known.
You know what? I'm gonna take this moment to just throw a counterpoint, like right in your face, and it's gonna feel so good. Jerry, in his own, I believe it's in getting comedians, the coffee show he does, getting coffee with comedians in cars, whichever order it goes. Yeah. He was talking about the broken wing syndrome and how a lot of different comedians seem to have this broken part of themselves. And he said, listen, if I had grown up in a brothel, would I have been funnier? Hell yeah. But I'm sorry to disappoint you. I come from a very nice family. My dad and mom are very nice people. I was fairly well off in Long Island, and yeah, none of that. But I would also say, personally, knowing the world of comedy, he's not your atypical stand-up comedian. Like, he's not your typical stand-up comedian. Like, he definitely stands out from the rest. He's almost cocky in that sense. Like, I think I don't particularly like Jerry as a person.
No, he's not. He does not seem like a good person to talk to. Seems like an asshole, to be real. But you're right. He did grow up in a fine household, it seems, and it still manages to be quite funny and a good comedy writer.
You know what his philosophy is on why people come to watch stand-up comedy, which I completely disagree with. So there's the George Carlin school of thought that you do a bunch of material, you build up to an hour special, and then you do the special for HBO back in the day, and then you throw it away, and then you start again. And Jerry thinks that's stupid. And the reason people come to your show is to watch your greatest hits, like Guns N' Roses or Led Zeppelin. People go to their shows for their best songs. People come to a stand-up comedian's show for their best bits. And whenever he does a show, his split is 80% of my best material and maybe 20% of stuff that I'm trying out.
Yeah, I don't know if I agree with that. I think there's a lot that Jerry Seinfeld says that I disagree with. To say it uncharitably, I would say that he has developed sort of like a messianic complex where it seems like he believes that comedians are God's gift to everyone and are just, giving this gift of laughter, and they're really modern day Mother Teresa's. No, I don't think...
Mother Teresa, by the way, is from the modern day. I find that example so hilarious.
What? She's not alive?
No, well, yeah, that's true, but she's not ancient. You know what? It's feeling, as we talk more and more, I feel like we can't separate the man from the show. And the fact that we're going to talk about Jerry means we're basically talking about comedy and stand-up. Which is perfectly fine with me. That's something that I would like to talk to people about all the time, and I don't. But I don't want to steer the topic away from the show if you want. So you have a choice.
It's what you want, isn't it? I mean, I try to bare my soul to you, and then you're like, what if I talk to you about post-impressionist painting? It's like, awesome. I'm not interested in that topic.
All right, then I will add a data point towards what you just said. Jerry was talking to other comedians in this HBO special called Talking Funny. I think it's Chris Rock, Ricky Gervais, and Louis C.K. back when Louis C.K. was still doing bigger things. Right. I think Ricky Gervais comes from a family where he genuinely believes all of his siblings are funnier than he is. Like, he says, my brother is way funnier than I am or ever am, and anyone can be a comic. All we have to do is just get up there, write jokes, do it over and over, and you get better. Mm-hmm. And when he said that, Jerry looked so offended. And he was like, no, we're special. What are you talking about? No.
Yeah. I mean, I don't blame him. Like, he had an amazing show, and people are always complimenting him, and it's gone through his head a little bit, I think.
He also started early, right? He was like doing stand-up when he was 16, 17, whereas Ricky Gervais got into the industry like after an office job and all of that. So I think he can see a lot of other people in those shoes.
That makes sense. I do like that Jerry Seinfeld, because his whole life kind of revolves around comedy, and he didn't do any of these other jobs really. Like, he has like these comedy goggles on, and he'll just look at something, as far as I know, and I think this translates to the show, and any little thing he'll be thinking like, what is the element of comedy that I can distill from this? And I think that's why, just pound for pound, like, Seinfeld is the most comedy dense of any show. And then, like, you bring in these other writers who are able to add all these different flavors, and obviously Larry David with that particular style. I think that's part of what makes it so good. But his focus on observational humor is quite good, I would say.
No, that totally agreed with that. In fact, I think I remember listening to a snippet of Jerry and Larry David talking, and they're talking about casting Kramer. And I remember it was either Jerry or Larry who said that they saw him and they instantly were like, oh my God, that's amazing. This guy's so funny. And there was a third person sitting with them who was the exec, let's say, like the Hollywood stand-in, right? And they said, like, we got to get this person. And they're like, no, he doesn't look photogenic. He doesn't look anything like what Hollywood needs. But they're like, no, he's perfect. He's so funny. And the exec said, well, if it's funny you want, sure, go for this guy. And Jerry and Larry David were like, yes, why else are we here? We want the funny. What are you talking about? So going back to your point about casting, they played a huge role, both of them, in casting people for the main lead roles. And they were pretty adamant on not having pretty faces and actually having comedic actors who were really, really good comedic actors. And that's a really good decision.
Yeah. What's your, maybe turn this around a little bit. What's your experience with Seinfeld? Do you have a favorite episode?
That's a good question. I don't know if I have one episode that I would like put up on the pedestal and would argue for, in the sense that like, oh my God, this is my favorite episode because of these 5 reasons. But I'd probably say, yeah, the Soup Nazi episode, right? Like, it's so good. Because it does the Seinfeld thing of taking multiple threads and perfectly weaving them at the end. Like the arm war, the whole time, the arm war is whatever. And then the recipes are in there the whole time. And I feel like one thing that I appreciate about Seinfeld and the best episodes of Seinfeld is they still feel like real life without you saying this is exactly what's going to happen. Because a lot of the comedy shows that I watch now, having seen so much comedy, this is what's going to happen next, and this is going to be the punchline. And that's like 80% of the time, that's what happens. In Seinfeld, it's not the case.
Yeah. Because in a way, I guess there are a few punchline moments, but it's not really a punchline-driven show.
Mm-hmm.
It's more like real life, I guess. I'd like to go to see a COVID-related Seinfeld. Maybe someone on Reddit can write a screenplay or something. There used to be this great Twitter account that suggested modern-day Seinfeld, but I think they disbanded or something.
I think I've definitely seen a Reddit writes Seinfeld kind of subreddit or threads. And yeah, it's what you said, like not just the writers, but the audience has so internalized the personalities of those characters that people can just take any situation and say like, okay, how would George react to this? When we read those scripts, we also have expectations of those characters as being funny. So we're also like, kind of just like we expect good jokes from a good comic. If you read a script with those characters, you kind of laugh more than you should, maybe.
Yeah, I think I've checked out that subreddit, but not in a while. Maybe I'll go back and check it out. I want to add one thing that I've been pushing for like a year now. Like Twitter has different topics that you can follow. Like you can follow Bitcoin or The Bachelor or something, and then different...
Or Black Lives Matter,
Well, what I mean is like there's a particular thing called the topic where like you say you're interested in that thing and then it'll appear in your home timeline. But it's so far been, for a while, those topics were very limited. And I've been pushing like all the time saying like the number one thing I'm interested in seeing on my timeline is Seinfeld. And then finally, I mean, obviously not right now. Like there are other more important things now. But like back in the before time, I was like very interested in this. And finally, they released like the ability to have anyone ever talking about Seinfeld be put into your timeline. And I think it's going to be a great move.
That actually sounds great. I want to use that feature. Totally an aside, but something I do want to talk about that now that you're here. I have started using Twitter recently. I think maybe even like 2 months ago, like literally in quarantine, I've started using Twitter. And I mean, I'm definitely getting better at it. I followed your advice of like following a bunch of people. So I guess I'll add some topics now. It's such a different experience. I know, like I'm 12 years late to like, guys, did you know about this? Did you know about this?
I don't think I'm that good at it either. I think I've just totally transformed my whole thing by starting to follow lists, which are like specific collections of people. You don't have to follow them individually. You just take a list of the top historians, and then these different historians, that's just all you see. Or you can include it in your main feed timeline. Let's edit this out because I don't even know the words I don't use to define the things that you see.
I'll make a super edit. Let's just edit this out. All of those times we say that. By the way, Alex,
are you editing Oh, you're not moving things around. You're just like saying, we're going to remove the next 10 minutes.
So for the first 2 episodes, I didn't have to move anything around. For this one, I might have to, I think.
I'm sorry. It's not my fault that, I just say whatever inspiration strikes me at the given time.
No, this is definitely my fault because I explicitly should have made it clear that we're not going to do comedy today. And let's be very generous to the audience. We're not doing any comedy. We're just laughing at ourselves. But the first 2 people both are not your type. Like well, not in that sense. They're different personality types. That I think you date John. I don't know.
Yeah.
I could see you guys liking it. Yeah. So John and then James both were very like analytical and like kind of the topics were also informative. So it was Myers-Briggs and then the airline industry. So I don't think it compares. This topic is definitely fluid.
That makes sense. At the same time, I feel a bit hurt that you think that this topic is not informative. I feel like not only is it informative on the topic of Seinfeld itself, but many people could use the insights in this conversation and in the show to help improve their personal and professional lives.
You know what? I think I'm genuinely sorry. Yeah, I take that back. I think it's, you know what? It's shaping up to be the most informative, actually.
Thank you. What we're missing, I think, is like a call-in section where people would say, I'm going through this issue in my life, and given your experience watching Seinfeld, what do you think I should do? And that would be my best judgment, channeling the wisdom of Seinfeld to help them.
2 things.
Yeah.
One, you're definitely going to be a return guest. I think I should set those expectations with the audience already so that they know that. And secondly, it's going to be this. This is the peak. Every time it's going to be like this. And that's what they should expect. And I will expect.
This is good because there are not that many other topics that I know about, as I mentioned earlier.
Maybe next time we could do Seinfeld puzzles.
Wow.
Actually, that's a good point, actually. Have you ever made Seinfeld puzzles, or do you do that? Do you take puzzles and make them according to your other tastes?
Yeah, I would like to. I thought about making a Seinfeld set of puzzles for this thing called Puzzled Pint, but then I looked up and someone already did that like in 2016, much to my dismay.
Oh, I see.
But, if there's an audience for this kind of thing, maybe I'll start a GoFundMe, Patreon. I think
Patreon is the way to go. Patreon is the way. Actually, you could go OnlyFans.
It would be non-traditional, I think, from my understanding of OnlyFans.
No, get a Seinfeld body pillow and have at it.
All right, yeah. To everyone, I want to encourage everyone out there to experience and enjoy Seinfeld in their own way, whether that's using a body pillow or just watching the show or listening to a podcast about the show. These are all different and equally valuable experiences.
Do you think you would be able to okay, maybe let me rephrase the question. How many episodes could you do of a Seinfeld-only podcast?
Not that many. It would have to be, here's the thing. It's a very hard thing to do. Only the best interviewers could pull off a podcast about Seinfeld. I want to say that first. But also, I
was thinking solo, but let's say there's an interviewer there that's grilling you for some reason as you do a solo podcast.
Here's the thing, it's the kind of thing where just by itself, it will be a little boring, but a Seinfeld element added to another theme would be really great, if that makes sense.
Say more.
Well, let's bring it to the kitchen, this analogy here. Seinfeld is this spice that brings texture and clarity to whatever dish you're making and it will just open your eyes and bring you wonder to anything, just some dish of asparagus. But by itself, just having this spice, it would be overwhelming or just bad.
That is some of the most articulate speech I have ever heard on the topic of Seinfeld. Do we continue? Okay, I have a question. I have a tactical question.
Please.
Right? Let's say somebody out there has not seen Seinfeld,
Right.
hardly possible, or somebody hasn't seen it in a while, much more likely.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have a recommended viewing order? Are you only watch up to season X, or watch this season first, or only watch the best episodes? Do you have a preferred way to revisit Seinfeld?
Yeah, I think this is a good question, because most people who were born after 2000 probably haven't seen Seinfeld, or at least haven't seen too many Seinfeld episodes. Yeah, probably just watching a couple of episodes from the middle season area, seasons 4, 5, or 6, because that kind of gives you the best of both worlds. It's not too wacky, and the characters are still developed. And then subscribe to my Patreon page of Seinfeld content.
Which one, though? I know you have one for the podcast. You have one for the literotica you write on the side.
Right, just the Seinfeld erotica.
Very George heavy, I notice. Your Seinfeld erotica, very George heavy.
Well, it's like a slash fiction George Kramer. That's what I've been into recently. But yeah, George solo is also something that I'm very fond of.
Would you say you're following in the classic tradition of comedy writers and making it very autobiographical?
Yeah, you have to give a little bit of yourself, bringing yourself into everything you write, I think. So
that could be taken many ways.
Yeah, when you think about, when you read that story about George on the sex swing, maybe I've done that, maybe I haven't, but it's certainly coming out of my imagination.
Yeah, no, I'm subscribed to your RSS feed. I read all of them.
I wonder, though, I am curious how many people in different generations or in the younger generations have seen Seinfeld.
Yeah, that is interesting. Where is it available? It's not on Netflix, is it? Or
yeah, right now it's not on any platform, I don't think. Although for a time,
because if it's not on streaming, forget about it. Like, nobody young is gonna watch it if it's not on streaming.
Lazy, good for nothing, Gen Z kids. This is why society is crumbling. It doesn't have the moral,
so this part,
or the backbone of Larry David and Jerry Seinfeld.
So, I'm going to edit this part out and put it into my audio clip vault that I'm going to use to blackmail you in 20 to 25 years when you ultimately run for public office.
Yeah, I think, inevitably when Jerry Seinfeld does something extremely scandalous, and this will be great material for blackmail. Could definitely see that happening. I'm trying to think if there's any other nuggets of wisdom that deserve to be shared about Seinfeld.
Have you gone to the actual locations, like the street corners and such? Can you recognize them now?
Yeah. Well, okay, so his apartment, and I think also George's apartment, though, is not featured as much, are on the Upper West Side, which is where I live now. And you walk around and you can tell the facade, at least, of the apartment on the show is the same as what you would see walking around here. And also the various things that happen in the show that take place in New York, like the episode where they were on the subway, obviously I recognize, or different, like that deli that they go to, the diner, that's like a real diner, although they redid the interior so it doesn't actually look like that on the inside. Yeah,
that's such a missed opportunity for converting it into like the Seinfeld diner and then charging extra for the booth, the booth.
Believe me, this has been, so like first, all right, there's the diner exterior is Tom's Diner, which is on 110th. And that diner has exploited this to the maximum. Like the diner is terrible, the food is shit, but they have like all over the walls like pictures of every member of the Seinfeld cast, and people go there pretty much exclusively either to take pictures and say that they were there, or they're like drunk Columbia kids going there because it's a 24-hour thing. They go in there at 3 a.m. or something. That's like the only two reasons to go there. And then
I just want to say, if Tom is listening, those are entirely Alex's views.
Yeah. Tom, I stand by what I said. If you want to go ahead and make some better French toast, that's your prerogative. And then there's another diner that they based the interior on, and that's down on like 50th or something. And that diner too has exploited this, and they have pictures all around. So yeah, people are definitely taking advantage of this.
That's good though. That's good for them. I went to Albuquerque, New Mexico to visit just a friend, but we also ended up doing a Breaking Bad tour one of the days. Mm-hmm. And they actually have a Los Pollos Hermanos where you can go like get some food and like take pictures and stuff. And the interior is still like the show. And to me, as a fan of the show, that was definitely, you know what, I liked it more than I thought I would in my head, which is sort of strange. Like generally, I'm not impressed by stuff like that, but I was like a kid, so I think I really liked it.
It is kind of nice. And I feel that way on a smaller level. Like if I go to a bakery and there's a black and white cookie, that it brings me back to that episode where there's a black and white cookie. Or these little things that...
Or you go to get a rental car and they've given it away to somebody already.
Yeah. And certainly if that were to happen, that's what I'm saying. Like any of these little things are so indelibly linked in my mind to Seinfeld that they're just a cornucopia of things that bring me back.
I see. So seeing as you've obviously watched Seinfeld 5 times and it's the best show ever, not just the best comedy show, but the best show ever. Yes. What other shows come closest, right? Like if I really like Seinfeld, and so far I've already seen all the behind the scenes, this podcast has told me nothing. Right. What other shows are close enough for you?
Great question. If you're looking for those kinds of shows that really delve into the minutia of everyday life, I think, and also of interpersonal relationships, I think Peep Show is another great candidate. It's a show about these two British guys and their friendship and their lives. And I think it's a little bit more infused with pathos than Seinfeld, but it still gets at that same everyday life aspect. Let's see. Our first one.
Are you going to tell me you also relate to the character of David Mitchell?
I mean, I think I'm more David Mitchell than Robert Webb. But no, I don't think of myself as David Mitchell. He's just so sad. So pathetic.
I mean, that is the difference between the British and the American protagonist.
That he's more...
I think the way Stephen Fry put it was, or Stephen? I still don't know. Stephen Fry put it was, with the American protagonist, you're laughing with him, and with the British protagonist, you're laughing at him.
Interesting.
And you don't want him to succeed. It's more of a, look at him, he's an underdog and he's going to stay an underdog, versus even between the two offices, right? The office that is British and like David Brent is not going to be redeemed. Although his arc in the movie is a little bit better, but Michael Scott gets the girl in the end, gets everything.
Yeah, that's interesting. The British Office for me is hard to watch because
you don't like cringe.
I know there's a big complaint that like American shows are too afraid to cringe and they water everything down. But in this particular instance, it is true that it's just too hard for me to watch.
Alex, is there anything you want to tell me about the Twitter office space and your current management?
I'll have to hold all remarks on that particular topic.
I can edit this out for the blackmail wall.
Yeah, That's very kind of you. I think I will abstain at this time.
Did you say Epstein? No.
I feel like you have like this bingo card where like you're like trying to check off all the different things, and Epstein is definitely right at the center of topics that you're trying to hit.
No, I don't. I think
Pizzagate,
I think whenever you and I talk, we definitely have our pairing. Definitely has a way of where we get away from the topic. Like we both escalate, so that happens. Like for example, if we had John here and we were still talking about Seinfeld, we would probably be more on topic, even though John would not be happy.
Yeah, he's the centering force in our lives.
Have you seen Jerry live?
I have not. I think I should at some point, although I know I'm going to be a little disappointed. But he plays. I probably would have seen him this year because he comes and plays at the Beacon, which is not too far away from where I live regularly. He has like some sort of residency there. One day I'll see him, I think.
He came by the Bay Area once, but the ticket was exorbitantly expensive.
Yeah, right.
Like it was $200, and I was like, I am not about to pay $200 for a comedy set. I've seen many other great comics, like really A-listers, like superstars, and never paid more than, I don't know, $60, $70. So it just seems insane.
Yeah, a bit insane. I agree.
Yeah, no, because like $200 is like, I'd expect that for like an ensemble show, like a big Broadway musical or somewhere where like a bunch of people are performing. There's props. There's like, yeah, the cost makes some sense because the expertise going into it is like 50 to 60 people, or even a band that's like huge, or a bunch of bands, but like literally like a headliner with two other comics. Like that's no, please.
It seems gratuitous. Like he's so rich.
Yeah, I know.
I don't want to spend my time bashing Jerry Seinfeld. He's got his quirks. He's a little bit of an asshole, but he made a great show. So I'm not trying to be bitter about him.
All right, so if we switch gears for a second, yes. Let's talk about how awesome Jerry is.
In the show?
Oh yeah. Personally, I think he makes the world a better place.
If you were to give yourself to combine portions of each character to make your full self, like 20% George, 10% Jerry, or whatever, how would you allocate proportion to each of these four characters?
Oh, that is such a good question. Do I need? Okay, yeah.
Yeah, you don't have to. You can eliminate one character entirely. I would say I'm like, I used to be more George, but I think I've become more Jerry. Maybe 35% Jerry, 40% Jerry, 30% George, 15 Kramer and Elaine. Kind of a lame answer because I'm just distributing them evenly.
No, it's not a lame answer because what I'm thinking about is if I had asked you that question maybe 5 or 10 years ago, you would have been like 100% George.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah.
I don't think I personally, I don't relate to George that much at all. Because like the scheminess that he has, right, is very against, like I either do something or I don't do it. I don't have, like half-assing something is it's weird to me. Like I want to like kind of just do something properly, and that is so George. And also that's not you, by the way. Like I don't see you like scheming and stuff.
Yeah, I'm not really.
So I think, but the thing is, George has to scheme because he's not smart enough. Like I'm not saying we're like paragons of intellect. We're regular people, but right. He is definitely dumb.
All right, I guess the question with George is like, maybe not to his extent, but when he gets upset at stuff in the show, do you sympathize with him, or do you think, why would you get upset about that?
So I think I sympathize with him for a good 5 seconds and then not for the rest of the episode.
Interesting.
And the rest of the episode is much more, you really did not need to escalate it to this degree.
Yeah, that's fair enough.
Like, let's think about the jerk store episode.
Yeah. Yeah, that was a bit much. But to have a line with perfect as jerk store and not use it, don't you see how wrong that is?
I guess I'm not 0% George, because who amongst us hasn't hasn't perfectly envisioned the jerk store response in a shower time or something. So, fair point. I concede that part of my soul is George.
Great. The more, I'll say another bold statement. The more all of us, everyone in the world, sees the George in themselves, the more we can come together as one. The more world peace is possible.
Yeah, I definitely think so, because I think once you kind of inhabit the mind of that character, you would be like, oh God, fuck this. Like, everybody needs to have a better life.
Yes.
Yeah, other shows. Let's go back to that question.
Oh. I mean, there are other shows that I really like, but I don't know if they're related to Seinfeld. Like, I love the show Nathan For You. I don't think it's particularly like Seinfeld. I'm just thinking of comedies here. I love, like,
Let's talk about Nathan For You for a second.
Okay.
I also really like Nathan For You, and if you asked me to bucket it, I would put it in a similar category, but I don't know why.
It's because he's
why
Jewish.
do you think it?
I cannot believe you would bucket all Jewish comedians in the same. Just unseemly.
I didn't even know there were other Jewish comedians other than Seinfeld. I thought he was allowed to be the only one.
All right, fair enough. I
Actually, you know who my favorite Jewish stand-up comedian is? It's Gary Gulman.
I don't even know who that is.
He is so good, man, and also also pure observation humor. But he does a lot of language trickery. Like, he uses certain words which are just hilarious. Like, his word choice is excellent. He's also clean like Jerry. Like, he does very timeless bits. Like, one of my favorite bits of his is on cookies, just like cookies, different types of cookies. Really recommend checking him out. Just, search Gary Gulman cookie hierarchy.
Okay, I'll check it out. I like that topic too.
Do you go to comedy clubs for like live comedy?
I nowadays am not going to too many comedy clubs.
Well,
some restrictions.
Thanks for really dating these episodes, Alex.
Hey, I didn't say any particular reason. It could just be a time in my life where I'm not interested in going to comedy clubs.
Yeah. Since that one incident at Chuckles.
I don't go too often to stand up. I went a couple of times in San Francisco, and
big names or just regular, like, local comics?
I think a mix. I saw Norm Macdonald.
Oh, so good.
He was great.
We chatted about this.
Yeah, we both love Norm Macdonald. Well, we like his comedy. I just feel like there's something weirder that's happened with him. He's become more and more this like
crotchety
old man.
Like his thing now is like
He's become his stereotype that he created.
He has become an impression of himself.
Do we all?
On purpose, though.
Is this all of our fate to become that which we impress?
I needed that. Oh my God. You know what? I don't think so because most of us don't have defining traits to the point where other people can literally imitate us with one grunt. I think that is an honor reserved for Norm Macdonald
Yeah,
and Tim Allen.
it's true. It's true. I wonder if Seinfeld can be brought into other media.
Oh, is there a Broadway, Seinfeld Broadway?
The issue is that Seinfeld shies away from any kind of emotion, and Broadway typically does involve emotion, and theater involves emotion. So it's hard to imagine how that would work.
I guess if you want to really lack emotion, we could do a Seinfeld interpretive dance.
I don't know. Aren't those supposed to tug at your something?
Has one for you?
Maybe like a cartoon.
Oh,
It's the
you're
closest
thinking
medium
like
I can think that would capture the same vibe.
they did a cartoon for the Mr. Bean show. Did you
No,
know that?
I
Yeah, they
didn't.
made Mr. Bean into a cartoon, and then the cartoon has way more episodes than the original show, and it's so bad.
Interesting.
Because anyone can like, well, not anyone, but they got a guy. It's not Rowan Atkinson, but they got a guy to go like, oh,
Oh yeah,
oh.
that clearly wouldn't work because Rowan Atkinson is Mr. Bean. He is like he is so perfect in his role. So if you took him out of it, the whole thing would be pointless, I think.
And you were proved right.
Great. So you should trust me based on that when I say that you should watch Seinfeld.
I trust you in that statement even more than I trust my own past viewings. It's a good show.
I'm glad.
Do you have, okay, this is a pivotal question, I think. I think this makes or breaks whether you are lying about all of this.
Wow. I'm listening.
How much Seinfeld merch do you own?
Good question. And
I'm just gonna tell the audience you're frantically looking around the room.
No. All right, I'll tell you what I have. Although I don't agree that merch equates to fandom or legit fandom.
And let's include on person as well as your storage locker.
Yeah, well, my Seinfeld onesie. I mean, let's include this, of course. No,
Yeah, that looks gorgeous.
I've got a page-a-day Seinfeld calendar that my mom gave me for my birthday. One of those cute little things where you tear off a page and each page tells you like a little fun tidbit. I could even tell you today's tidbit if you like. The other thing I have is this. Do you know the sort of spectroscope viewfinder kind of thing where it's like you're holding these binocular type things in front of your eyes and then you flip the switch and then it goes to a next photo and you kind of go through a reel of images that's contained in a little cartridge in the binocular type thing.
I believe it's called a Viewmaster.
Viewmaster, that's the term exactly. I have a Viewmaster with a Seinfeld reel. So you flip through and it's different scenes from different episodes, which is lovely, and which I got from going to this Seinfeld pop-up exhibit down in like Soho or something about a year ago that had all these little trinkets and handmade art related to Seinfeld. And I wish I had bought more because I think those are the only two things that I can think of at the moment.
So what I'm hearing is you only support the mom and pop Seinfeld stuff.
Yes. Yeah. Indie Seinfeld. I don't like those mainstream conglomerates.
I mean, that does fit with Seinfeld's indie theme.
Yeah. They have enough money. But also I'm plugging their whole show here. So if anything, I should get a kickback for how much new viewership they might be receiving as a result of this.
Partial syndication.
Yes, exactly.
Let's have our people get in touch with Jerry's people.
Oh, here's a good question, and it leads into a good topic, I think. The question is, why did Larry David... Some of these are not that interesting, to be honest. But I guess they're making some money off. It's not like Seinfeld himself. It's like someone who's trying to capitalize off of Seinfeld. The question is, why did Larry David want to include a trial as a part of the final episode? And it's a multiple choice, but I'm not going to give you the multiple choice.
Is it because they felt like the audience has put them into a trial box?
That's a good guess, but no. He liked the idea of bringing back a parade of the most memorable former guests to testify to the ways the foursome had wronged them.
Okay. Did you like the finale?
I did like the finale. A lot of people didn't at the time, and even after. They thought it was... I don't even know what the real complaints are about it. They thought it was out of character, I guess. They thought it wasn't right for them to be punished, and also that they weren't as bad as they were made out to be. I don't know what all the complaints are, but I thought it was fine. It was like a fun way of bringing everyone back and bringing it full circle.
But for the best show ever, is it the best finale ever?
No. I think it was a perfectly good finale, but it wasn't the best finale of any show.
Yeah, it feels like that. Like, I don't hate it, but I don't love it as much as I wanted to love it.
Yeah. But I would be remiss if I did not say one other thing about Seinfeld, and that relates to the finale, and it relates to this conception that many people have. At least I see it on Reddit. I don't know if people have it in real life, but I see it on the internet, where it's like people think that these characters were just awful people who didn't care about anyone but themselves. And not only that was true, but that was the reason why the show is funny. And it's just so ridiculous. Like, the show is funny because of all these little nuances in social life. And I don't even think that these characters, they are certainly unemotional and unavailable. But are they like the worst people in the world? It's just such an outrageous thing to say.
Yeah, that is quite outrageous. I think I would go as far as saying they are stuck in place. So they have no character development, which is unnerving for characters you're with for 9 years.
Mm-hmm.
But honestly, looking now at, sitcoms like It's Always Sunny, like, those people are way more degenerate than anything that used to happen in Seinfeld. So I think they set the path and or set the journey in motion for like all of these different other sitcoms to come up and just really own a group of degenerates doing bad things with bad consequences. And at the start of every episode, they're right back where they started. Workaholics is another one that's just like that. And honestly, before Friends, Cheers is a bit like that, if you've ever seen Cheers.
Yeah, Cheers. I guess one element that is kind of true is that they don't allow themselves to be emotional or vulnerable. And sometimes I don't know if you feel like this, like the things that you spend a lot of time watching or being a part of, like you question whether or not that thing, what effect that thing has on your life. Like, that you really like this thing and it's fun, but when you think about all the aspects in which it changes your life, sometimes I do worry that, like, have I spent so much time watching this show that it's harder for me to connect emotionally with people. Like I have this view of the world that's very superficial. It's based on this superficial show, because it is a little bit superficial in the sense that it doesn't dig into these deep relationships. And if I'm modeling my life off of this show, what does that say about my ability to form deep human connection? Ponder that, if you will.
That is something, even joking aside, that is something I've actually pondered in the past, which is I think that really digs deep into the character of Jerry, actually, more than George, which is he is so, for example, his taste in women and how he dates over the series, right? Like, he broke up with somebody because she doesn't eat a pea properly, or like some kind of really minor thing. I remember that whole episode, and he even introspects a little bit. and that I know Jerry's also the same way in real life. Like basically he like dated till he was 40, whatever, got married. And to me, it was like, is this normalizing that this is how you should behave in a romantic scenario? Like really optimize to the nth degree and overall be less happy than some person who is probably committed for much longer? Or, isn't
I
that
think it does
picky?
normalize it a little bit. But, I mean, they're not really happy in the show. So you could say, this is not an example that you're encouraged to follow. But still, if you empathize with the character, then I think it can't help but have some effect on you.
And it's not even just Seinfeld. Like I could have the exact same complaint about, let's say, Joey
Right.
in Friends, that like they legitimately show that he is happy pursuing this kind of life, right? And oh yeah, it's so fun. I'm always doing this and that, but never actually explore the negative aspect. It's a sitcom, right? They're gonna keep it light. They're gonna keep, and especially for Friends. But I definitely think that people who have grown up with that generation of sitcoms will have certain, borders they've drawn where, is this mean I'm dating too much, dating too little? Should I hold out for this long? Clearly this character like went way into their 30s or 40s or whatever, and it's totally fine if I do that. And I'm not saying it's a good or bad thing, but I think it's definitely had an impact.
Yeah. And I know that you spend a lot of time playing Rocket League too. And
I do.
I wonder if that has an impact on how you try to kind of run up walls and feelings.
Rocket League has a ton of impact on my life when it comes to trusting two strangers and how competent they're going to be in simple tasks.
Do you trust them less now? Or
Oh, way less. Way less. Anyway. You also didn't, by the way, go into any secret merch, like, do you have Seinfeld socks? That's where I'm going to leave it, but...
Yeah, I'd rather the public didn't know about those kinds of things.
Or till you don't become a more famous, recurrent guest anyway.
Yes, exactly.
I can see our audience being very polarized, and when I announce there's going to be a new Alex episode, like some people are going to be overjoyed for sure.
Yeah. It'll be a reward for all those listeners who started early. They can reap those rewards later on.
That makes a lot of sense. I guess what are things related to Seinfeld that we haven't talked about?
What are the topics? I think we covered all the key ingredients that make Seinfeld great.
All right, I guess let me just leave people then with how about you leave people with a small inspiring statement that will have them rushing to buy the box set of DVDs?
Rather than a quote that summarizes the essence of Seinfeld, which Seinfeld is so vast and so detailed that I would not feel competent at giving such a quote, but I would like to leave with a little quote that expresses how I feel about you, Bassem, and your skill as an interviewer and your preciousness to me as a friend. And that is this, from the card that Kramer gave Elaine on her birthday. That goes something like, think where man's glory most begins and ends, and say that my glory was to have such a friend.
I couldn't have said it better myself. Thank you so much for your time, Alex. This was more informative than I thought, and definitely as funny as it always ends up being when we talk.
My pleasure.
And maybe one of these times we'll do a switcheroo and I'll have you on as an interviewer, and then I can discuss the topic.